All right, guys, so hopefully in this video, I'm going to be teaching you my method when it comes to reading. Now, primarily this isn't my method. I got this from one of the favorite books I've read of all time. That's How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. Now, the problem with most people today, and listen, I had a huge fucking problem. For the longest period of my life, I never read at all. Truth be told, like I didn't fucking enjoy reading because it's how we were taught from the get-go of how to read. It's a very binary relationship when you think about it. Most people are ingrained from school. It's very simple. You get a book, you open it up, and you read word for word, and you literally forget 99% of things. It's not an experience. It's not a process. Most people don't enjoy the process of opening up a book and having a relationship with the book. And when I read Mortimer Adler's book, How to Read a Book, that kind of brought it up my mind of different ways you can have a relationship with books. And so in this video, I want to kind of quickly, briefly go over some of his strategies when it comes to reading a book. It's a very thick book, so I highly recommend you get this. I'm using the resource or Cole's note from fastertomaster.com, and I'll leave a link below on the show notes for this. However, basically, I kind of want to summarize. I want to summarize the process because it's very simple. It's a good checklist you can have when it comes to reading a better book. And I have a great book in front of me right now. I just had him on my podcast, Oliver Haydorn, PhD, Social Credits and Economics. I'm about to dive into that over the holiday break. And I'll use this as an example today on how I'm going to approach this book, because if you look at it, it's a thick motherfucker, right? It has about 500 plus pages. And so basically how it works is this. And you can see the notes over here. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I'll leave a link so you can see it. But the whole idea, the premise to kind of simplify the process for you is this. So Oliver, he studied social credits for a very long time of his life. He has a PhD. And he has spent, let's say, years gaining information to create this book. How most people would approach reading any book, they're just going to open it up and start reading from page one, right? Blah, 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 and that's it, right? They go page by page and they forget everything. The first step when it comes to reading any book is you want to understand who the author is. Remember, the author has spent years, if not decades, some authors, of putting their ideas and theses and thoughts down on a piece of paper. You want to understand the viewpoint from the author, because this gives you the framework to understand how the author views the subject itself, right? Remember the last video I talked about how to think critically. We talk about biases. We talk about context. Well, biases plays a role in this. Context plays a role in this. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go in the back and literally find out who Oliver is. In this case, I met Oliver and I talked to him for more than 3 hours, so I know him quite well, which gives me a great primer and preliminary information on how I'm going to approach this book, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to Google the author. You can start in the back over here. You want to Google the author, and you want to understand who this author is. Why has the author spent his or her time on organizing this book and putting down their thoughts? That's the first thing you want to do. Really understand the author's psychology. The second thing you want to do is you want to go through the table of contents. So in this case, why you want to pull out the table of contents? The table of contents gives you the overview of how the author and the publishers organize their thinking within the book. In this case, we got, part 1, part 2, part 3, bibliography, index. Within each section, you have subsections, right? So this gives you the general idea of how he or she has organized their thinking to approach this book. And it's really important. This gives you a good kind of primer and understanding of the thesis of the book, right? So already you're at a head start, already, right? Before you even read one word, before you dive into the book, you understand who the author is, you understand their previous work, you understand, their experience. Now you understand how they've laid out the book in front of you, okay? Now the table of contents. The next thing what you want to do is a very simple process is, let's say something catches you on the table of contents. In my case over here would be part 3. They talk about current financial policies must be replaced by correct financial policies. So page 345. I would go to page 345. And I would quickly skim areas, right? I just skim. I look at areas and I skim. And basically the whole process is you skim. You go to areas that fancy your eye and you skim. And basically what you're doing, you're data gathering. You're gathering tidbits of information from the book, because how most people approach the book, or how most people approach any learning process, is we look at everything from a linear aspect, right? We think the human mind works from A, B, C, D, but the human mind is exponential. We don't just learn linear from A to B. We may go from A to Z, Z to G, G to P, P to E. We're all over the place, right? We connect the dots. And it's really seldom that you're going to read in a linear fashion that you're going to absorb information. Remember, most of the things within a book you're not going to remember. You want key takeaways from the book. So after I've gone through the process of skimming around, I put down the book, and I actually then take out a piece of paper. And what I take out is, what do I want to gain from this book? Because most people, they think they have to remember everything. That's not the case. The whole point of reading, the whole point of having experienced a book, is to make you think better. It's to put different ideas in your mind so those ideas can percolate. There's a saying, an intelligent man is able to have two different opposing viewpoints in his mind and able to hold those thoughts, as opposed to just having one thought. Two thoughts together, and you've got to let that percolate and mature and let those thoughts grow together. So once you've done your scan, I take out a piece of paper, I take my pen, and I write what I want to gain from this book. In this case, I'm not too familiar with social credits. I've had a great primer by having Oliver on the show. I did some background who he is. I went through the book, I scanned everything, I took some notes down, and basically what I want to do now with my 8x11 piece of paper is, what do I want to gain from this book? Number one is, I want to know the general principles of a social credit. I might not care about the history. The history doesn't help me with the future of the knowledge I gain from social credits. So basically, it's like, I want to know the general principles. And this is how Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they look at the fundamental principles of anything new they want to learn. So what are the principles of social credits? That's number one on my checklist. Out of everything, or out of all the time I spent on this book, the only thing that I fucking care about is, what is the fundamental principles of social credits? And based on that kind of North Star, is like, honestly, maybe only 20 pages matter for me then, out of the whole book. Because I'm not going to become an expert after reading the book. I just want to know the fundamental principles. So I make a checklist of maximum 3 to 5 points, right? So number one point for me for this would be, what are the fundamental principles of social credits? Once you have your checklist of 3 to 5 points, what you want to do is you want to locate sections in the book, going back to the table of contents, right? So I go back to the table of contents, and I see where my checklist may associate with the table of contents, right? So if I'm looking at different parts, there's 3 parts, and there's about 5 sections in each single part, and I'm going to go to that section, and I'm going to skim around. I'm going to look at paragraphs, I'm going to highlight words, or highlight pages, I'm going to bunny fold ears, and I'm just going to spend maybe half an hour skimming that. Once I've skimmed that, and then I'm going to go back to the book another day. And I'm going to go back to the sections with another piece of paper. And I'm going to spend my time on the areas that I skimmed down to write down my notes. I want to see what, I'm just going to, for the sake of this video, just pay attention to the only thing that I care about is the principles of social credits. So I'm going to write down my thesis. What do I think social credits are? What are the fundamental principles of social credits? I'm going to write that down and create a 1-page paper of my summary of the principles of social credits. Because at the end of the day, out of 500 pages, what am I going to really gain out of 500 pages? I'm not going to remember 99% of the things, right? But if I just gain the principle of what social credits are, this book is it's worth its weight in gold, right? And so that's how kind of Mortimer Adler digs into things. He goes into crazy stuff like meta learning. Like you have, for example, over here you have inspectional learning, which is systemic skimming, which I just mentioned. Right, then you have analytical reading, right? Then it's pretty big book, right? So he has different types of reading. But generally speaking, if I want to summarize the process of reading, it's not reading, it's an experience, right? You're going at it as a general. You want to go with a game plan. What is your strategy? What insights do you want to gain? Because remember, it's about action plan too. Most people read for the sake of reading without doing anything with that knowledge. This system forces you to use critical thinking. This system forces you to actually acknowledge the information that you gain from a book and write down your own summaries and hypotheses of the information that you gain. And that's how you should approach everything in life. Don't do things for the sake of doing things. People tell you read for the sake of reading. Why? How many fucking books have you read that you don't remember shit? Or how many podcasts have you listened that you don't remember shit? How many things have you done in your life for the sake of doing those things and you don't fucking remember shit? I'll tell you what, I've been there 100 times. Happens all the time. And it's a waste of time. Literally, it's a waste of time. And at the end of the day, time is the most important resource we have on this fucking planet or in the universe. And so that's it in a nutshell, man. It's like, don't approach reading just for the sake of reading. I really recommend you read Mortimer Adler's book or go check out this quick Coles note. Like I said, I'm going to leave a link below this video. But if you have any comments for me about this, like, I love to know your reading processes. I like to know what kind of experiences you have with different forms of reading. And leave a comment. Make sure to subscribe to this video, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.